Hey there, and welcome to part 2 of our Valentine's weekend sew-along. Yesterday we made the heart block, and today we're going to turn it into a cushion cover. Now what you're going to need is your heart block from yesterday, and you're going to need 4 2.5 by 12.5 inch rectangles for the sashing, which we're going to put around each of the sides and the top and the bottom. And then you need 4 2.5 inch squares, which we're going to put around the corners for cornerstones. Now I'm going to sew them together row by row like that, and I'm going to chain piece them like I did the heart. I'm not going to snip in between them. This makes it just a little bit easier. Now I had filmed this yesterday and I talked through the whole thing, and I went to edit it this morning, and guess what? There was no sound. So that's why I'm now doing a voiceover, and I do apologize for that. I hope this will still make sense, and I will try my best to make it all make sense. So what I'm doing here is I'm chain piecing it, and what I forgot to tell you was that I am pinning the sashing strips to the block. I'm not pinning the cornerstones to the sashing piece, but I am pinning the sashing to the block, as you'll see here. I've just done that, so I should have shown you that earlier. Okay, I'm going to go and sew this together, and I will bring you back when the 3 left rows are sewn together. Okay, here I've sewn all those left sides together, and now I've got to sew the right sides to it, and I'm going to chain piece them as well. I may have gotten the cornerstones mixed up because I knocked them over, but yeah, now I'm going to sew it together, and I'm going to pin the long side together as well. Now that's done, and all we need to do is sew the rows together, and I'm going to be pinning them as well. And usually, like I said in the last video, usually we press towards the darker side, but again with this one we're going to finger press towards the background or the sashing, because the other stuff like there is just too bulky. So we're going to do that with this, with the sashing as well, just like we did with the heart piece. And I'm going to pin that nice and neatly, and I will go and sew it together and bring you back. I'll sew the top and the bottom together, and I'll bring you back when it's done. Alright, I took it to the ironing board and I've pressed it nice and neatly, and it's looking quite good. I'm happy with how it looks. Now, as I'm trying to voice over this, I did clearly, by all my hand gestures, I clearly had a lot of explaining to do and talking about it, and I've got no idea what I was saying. So I think what I was saying was that at this stage, if you wanted to, you could make a quilt sandwich with some backing and some batting, and you could quilt this. And if you'd like to do that, you can go ahead. But for this project, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something a bit easier, just because there are some of you who are beginners and you might not want to quilt it. So we're going to do something different, and we're going to use something else that I'm going to grab in a second, and I will show you. But again, if you want to quilt it, you can. So what I've decided to do instead is use a product that we call Whisper Weft here in Australia, and it's a really light interfacing that I mostly use for my embroideries, or the back of my embroideries. It's sticky on one side, so On this side here it's bumpy, and you can iron that onto your fabric. On the other side it's smooth. And what I'm thinking of doing is just cutting that a little bit smaller than the block and then ironing it on to the back so that it covers up all of the seams and everything, because this will be a cover that you can take off and wash. So it's better if if when it goes through the wash you don't get it all unraveling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller. So at the moment the block with the sashing is 16.5 inches wide, and I'm going to cut this square or this whisper weft to 16 inches, and I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Okay, I've cut the whisper weft into a 16-inch square, and as you can see I'm going to put it on the back. It's just a little bit smaller than the actual square, pieced square, but that doesn't matter. I don't want to have it bigger because then once I iron it, it will stick onto the ironing board. So it needs to be a little bit smaller, and it'll cover up all the threads and the raw edges there very nicely. So I'll go ahead and iron that on, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. And here it is all nicely ironed on, and you can see how that covers all the raw edges up really nicely and makes it look nice and neat. There's a few bits that it hasn't covered, but that'll be fine. Some of that will go into the seam allowance in a minute. So now we're ready for the next step, which is to put on the back pieces for the cushion cover. Okay, so what you need for the back is you need 2 rectangles, and they need to be 16.5 by 10 inches. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually hem them. So hem one side of each of the 16.5 inches. And basically what I do, you can pin it, but I just press it, finger press it about 1/4 inch down, and then another 1/4 inch, and then I sew. So we want to do this on 2 edges, 1 edge of each of the rectangles. So the other edges will be caught in the seams, but this is where the 2 bits of fabric overlap, and they turn into the envelope sort of, I think they call it the envelope method of making cushion covers. You can pin if you want, but I've done it so often that I don't need to pin anymore, and it has taken, quite a few years of doing this to get to the stage where I don't need to pin, so don't worry if you need to press it and pin it first. Okay, so I've got one of the long sides from each rectangle hemmed nicely, and now we're going to sew it to the top. So you're going to put right sides together and put one piece down the bottom, matching up all the edges there, and the other piece at the top of the cushion cover, and so that the hemmed edges overlap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew all around it, and this is where I like to use flathead pins. I don't use them very often, but I use them in these kind of projects where I don't want them to get in the way. So I'm grabbing them from my Pincushion all the way on the other side of the sewing machine, and as I'm doing this I'm thinking, okay, I really need to get one of my thumb Pincushions and have that dedicated to flat head pins. And sorry about my hair, you can see my head here, so I do apologize for that. So I'm just pinning it here, and then once it's pinned nice and flat so that it's not going to move, I can sew all the way around it. I also use these pins if I was going to quilt this top, I would have used these flathead pins. I quite like using them for these kind of projects. So I'm going to sew all the way around, and I'll get back to you when it's done. Okay, I've sewn all around it, and I did decide in the end to grab one of my pin cushions, my thumb pin cushions, and put them in there, and that's so much easier than reaching across to the other side of the sewing machine, and I will have it there for next time when I need it. I've got so many of these thumb pin cushions, and I know some of you have made them already. There's a link, I'll put a link to the tutorial. Now I'm going to cut the corners off of all these corners just a little bit, so that when you turn it around it sits a little bit better. I'm sure you've done this before and you know what to do. It also gets rid of all those threads at the ends and neatens it up a bit. And now I'm going to turn it, and I am going to take my thumb pincushion off so that it doesn't get caught. I'm going to turn it right side out. I'm just pushing the corners out with my fingers or my fingernails. And that sits beautifully, and look how cute that is. I'm going to go and iron it, and I will bring it back and we'll put a cushion insert into it. So that's on ironed nicely. And I've got a cushion insert that I got from our local craft shop called Spotlight in Australia. It's a size 16, which is 41 by 41 centimeters, and I worked out that 16 inches, about 16 inches square. So you can grab whatever insert will fit, or you could even make your own, but I just think buying the inserts is so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and stuff it in here and see what it looks like. And like I said, you can take this cushion cover off and wash it, which is handy because I've got dogs and cats. I got a dog and a cat, and all my stuff gets hairy, so I do like to be able to wash my cushion covers. And look at that, how cute is that? I'm just going to take it over to the ironing board and show you how it would sit on a couch or on a chair. And here it is, and I'm really liking it. So that was a quick fun project, I hope. And I will have a, I'm just showing you what's on my design wall. So there are a few more hearts that I made and a wonky block, and these are some blocks of the month that I'm doing at the moment. And behind the cushion, I'm going to give you a sneak peek. No one except me has ever seen this before. This is the first block for our block of the month this year. We're doing another red work block of the month, and that'll be coming out in March. Yeah, I'm covering it up real quick again. So this is the cushion cover. I will have a pattern that linked in the description that you could buy if you want to have it as a printable pattern with all the instructions. I hope you really enjoyed this, and thank you so much for coming along with me and watching. Please subscribe and like, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.